You are now live. Hello, everyone. Moving this back just a tiny bit. I don't really get to see, before I do a live, YouTube doesn't really let you see what you're going to see until you've gone live. And then you're like, oh my goodness, that's too close or too far away, or I need to do my hair a little bit. You don't get the luxury of that, I'm afraid. So what am I doing here with this is bring it down just a tad more so you got more in frame. So this is actually the leather that's going to go on the inside of the bag. Okay, I created a prototype the other day in fabric, so just so you can see what it kind of looks like when it's been flipped inside out. So it's stitched inside out like this, and then it's flipped right side out, which this kind of fabric is mimicking. And then that goes in there like that, and then we have all the grommets and everything and the drawstring, and that's how it basically works because there's openings here. And instead of using canvas, I'm using a very soft Italian calf skin, which is what I've got here. Let's take these grommets out. I actually just put them in for the process of creating a thumbnail for this live so people can kind of get an idea of what I'm doing visually. So right now it's just the grain side is stuck to itself, so I've got to be very careful with it because it's only a thin line of glue holding it all together. And now I'm going around the perimeter and stitching that in using a yoga block and some bits of wood to pack it out. And this is thin thread, but strong. And relatively close spacing. We've got a 3mm spacing here, so it's going to take a little while to do, to be fair. And kind of hard to see because this is sueded on the back of this calf skin. So the interior will be the suede side, which I think is quite nice in its own right. Daniel says hi. Dave Rooney, hi from Canada. Hello from the United Kingdom. Still getting over the cold. Yesterday's live was hard to get through. Today I've got a coffee with me because it's the talking that hurts my throat, strangely enough. I was like, oh, I feel fine. Let's do a live, do a bit of work. And then like, after 20 minutes of talking, I was like losing my voice. So I got some coffee there with a bit of Manuka honey, which I didn't like on first sip, but I'm actually quite liking the flavor now. I'm not going too tight on this. I mean, generally on something that's flipped, you do want to give it the beans to really sandwich those layers together in the seam so that when it's flipped right side out, you're not seeing that thread or anything like that. But being soft chrome tan, there is a limitation to that. So it's just snug, just a bit more than I would normally give some chrome tan. Hope you guys are doing well on your Sunday. And at this point, you've got all your presents for Christmas sorted. And you can sit back, relax. You got a little time off work. Watching some films with the family, doom scrolling, reading a book, whatever tickles your pickle. I can't quite do that. I had the audacity to get ill, which set me back. So I've still got a bit of work to do and catch up on. Obviously, Christmas Day I won't be working, but inside and outside of that I will. So we can have this course ready to go for the new year. What day is it? 21st. 21st today. So not long to go. Hey guys, I'm just stitching here, so if you do have any questions or anything, feel free to join in. Thread wise, I get a lot of questions about thread. This time I'm using Fil Chinois Cordonnet Glacé, which is 100% polyester. I don't know what size it is. It's on the thinner end. It's a softer one. Let's try it actually waxed, because I've added some wax to this. It shouldn't compress as much. Just touching. We're looking at 0.4. So it's on the thinner end of things, which is what I'm looking for here. I don't want it too thick, otherwise we'll get some puckering going on along the seams when we flip it inside out. But it's a color matching, so if for whatever reason, right in the corners, we're having issues with a little bit of exposed thread, for whatever reason, it shouldn't happen. But if it does, you know, we're matching the same color as the leather exterior, so it's not so obvious. So if it was like, you know, pure white or something, you're going to see that. So I've gone with just a plain interior for this internal pouch. You know, it's not like this bag isn't intended to be necessarily the height of luxury. We do have a nice lambskin lining on the inside, but I'm not going over the top with, you know, there's not even a crease line on this bag that's visible. So it's altogether about something that's a bit more casual. So I haven't doubled up this leather or gone with even like a fabric interior to this pouch. I'm just leaving the suede side exposed. So it'll be quite nice and soft on the inside of the bag. And it's quite a nicely finished piece of calf, to be fair. So, yeah, apologies. This, well, no, I did say it was polyester. I take that apology back. This is polyester. Linen I have put on the outside of this bag. Does it have a shelf life? I mean, this is an unopened piece of vintage Barber. From what I can find out, this is like 60s or 70s, so older than me. And I got this. I got another couple of these, an open one that I use, and I can honestly say, without kind of like just for the sake of nostalgia, like things are better back then than they are now. I don't make them like they used to. It is the case where the thread is stronger than it should be. It's equivalent to like Fil Chinois 832. It's very thin, but exceptionally strong, stronger than modern linen threads. And I think that's because they would harvest the threads by hand, so the staple or the length of each strand of fiber was longer then than it is now. Nowadays, a lot of the process is done by machine, and you get a shorter staple, so it's more not as strong as it used to be when it was done in a more laborious way. But of course, they don't do that anymore because of time and cost and things like that. So, but the very fact that it's stronger than modern equivalents tells me that, it would maybe after a few centuries, perhaps. But then again, even stuff that's been sewn with linen thread centuries ago, excuse me, is still holding. I wouldn't put it under pressure, but to answer your question simply, not that I know of. Not that I know of. Oops. Simon says, hi buddy. Yeah, so I really honestly wouldn't worry about linen thread having a shelf life. If it's been wet for a prolonged period of time, or it's, it's, to be fair, it's pretty chemical resistant too, but if it's not, if it's been stored incorrectly and it's been wet for long periods, or very damp, or it's got mold on the surface or something like that, it would have to be something a bit more extreme. It is, at the end of the day, an organic material. So you might have issues there. But it might just be if it's got a bit of mold on it, unravel it a little bit, it might be fresh underneath, it might be fine. But I've never come across that, personally. There are very few times where I could say I think I should have a sewing machine to finish certain things. This would be it. It's not really a high strength seam or one that's going to come under a lot of stress, because it's just going to be inside a bag that limits how much it can expand. But this is going to take ages to do. I've got like 1.5 arm spans of thread, a 3mm stitch spacing, with small holes made by a small stitching chisel into the suede side. So it's like I have to feel for every single hole. I can't really see it. Just have to go by instincts, intuition of where it's going to be, and kind of like poke it, and when it gives, I know I've hit it. So it's going to take me a while. I think in this instance, I must admit, a sewing machine would be a lot more effective. But I've chosen my poison. Can't have my cake and eat it. Or as I say, a better version of that is, I can't eat my cake and still have it. Have you ever considered your own line of tools, perhaps a collaboration with an existing manufacturer? If so, what company would you want to work with? Yes, I do have like a ring binder with tool design ideas that I've come up with over the years. Every time I've come across something, I think of, that would be really handy for this niche scenario. What tool would work here? Does it exist? No, it doesn't. How would you make it? And, jot it down. Whether those will come to fruition, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, one of my long-term goals was to eventually purchase the name of Joseph Dixon of pricking iron fame, because I'm kind of a collector of their pricking irons. Not like a mindless collector, but like I have every size that I need. Excuse me. Yeah, and kind of take the name that people are familiar with and create a more modern pricking iron, update the steels, update the precision, but still keep that kind of chunkiness and the width of the prong for classic British style leather goods, briefcases, doctor's bags, that kind of thing. A lot of modern pricking irons it lacks the prong width to use bigger thread and heavy angles in there that really kind of tickle my pickle. So yeah, I would love to eventually purchase the name. Would I work with someone else? The collaborations like that are quite tricky. Probably not. If I'm going to go in on something, I'm going to go all in and kind of start from scratch so that I can run under my own steam with my own ideas. It's not that I don't play well with others. It's just that I like the freedom to do what I want. Exactly the way that I want it. What method do you use to get clean stitching on fabric? I'm sure assume it's not pricking irons. Oh my God. I thought the coffee would solve the cough. It's the talking. Clean stitching on fabric. It's going to be very difficult to do. So, if it's bonded fabric, you could use like a stitching chisel or a round prong pricking iron. You've probably seen them. Just makes a round hole, so it doesn't really cut. It just kind of stretches. That would probably be my choice. And using a thread color that very closely matches. So if there's a little bit of inconsistency, it's matching. It's difficult for the eye to pick up on and see. But generally speaking, you can get away with on fabrics like a running stitch, where you just kind of like weaving the needle in and out, and then you can kind of go back on itself and fill in the blanks. So kind of in a roundabout way, a saddle stitch, two running stitches will go back on themselves. I've done that before. It doesn't create the neatest stitch in fabric. You're not going to get angles or anything like that. It's just a very straight stitch that looks very much like a machine stitch, but it will be stronger. Lemsips required, yeah. Yeah, lemsips with a lot of honey. It's really weird. I don't really have a sore throat. I feel okay, just a little drained. I'm fine. But I get this like intense tickling after a while, after a few sentences. I'm all out of coffee. I'm going to have to communicate through Morse code. I'm just going to keep kind of tapping the mic. I'll explain leathercraft through the medium of interpretive dance. Oops. coming up to the corner here. A choice single malt. Yeah. Well, it's coming up to Christmas, so hopefully I'll get some more whiskey. I'm not fresh out, but I have a specific bottle ready for the new house move. If it goes through, which it should do at this point, but it's a very specific whiskey from the region that I'm moving to. And it was a gift, a very generous gift by someone. I'm like, I'm going to have my first sip of this the day that I move in. But outside of that, I've run out of my favorite, which at the moment is Talisker. I'm kind of all about the Talisker at the moment. Time for breakfast. Thanks for the live chat. Time for breakfast in Canada. Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. I thought it was later. Anytime it gets dark outside, like right now, it's like pretty much dark. It always feels so much later than it is, but it's only 3:47 p.m. Oh, I'm looking at the clock. I've got a watch on. So coming up to the corner, so what I'm going to do is actually stitch this in like a U shape all the way around, flip it over, do the same thing on the other side because it's symmetrical. And then all I have is these two short seams along the gusset side base on either side, and that's it. So 4 seams in total, just 2 of them are very long. Excuse me. SG-UC7LE. Yes, Stephen, you are right. That is it's a very unusual username that you've been given there. Yeah, not too bad. Just getting over a cold. It's that time of year, isn't it? All right. So I left this corner not prick marked, so we can kind of navigate it with an awl. So I didn't quite know how I was going to do it. Hi from Iran. Hello from the UK. I don't know how to change that. Shouldn't it just be the name that you've chosen? Should be on your settings if you go onto your dashboard. All right, so turning this round now. All right. How can we... Cool. It's really difficult seeing these the holes marked out in the suede. And we're making it work. We're making it work. All right, so hopefully we have enough to go all the way around. I'm gonna put another pattern weight there. So yeah, I think we're on track. We should have enough. We've still got, oh yeah, we've still got an arm span. Should be able to make that work. It's got to be one of the fiddliest seams that I've done in a while. But it'll look good when it's done. I have actually flipped this inside out with just the glue seam. So very carefully without breaking that glue line, just to see how it fits. And it does fit pretty good, so quite happy with how it's turning out. I've been a subscriber for a long time. Great content. Thank you very much. Thank you for your subscribes. Great content. Hi. Oh, you started already. What are you making? Yes, I've started already. I am making the interior for this, for the bucket bag, which is the course on design that I'm working on at the moment. What's that? Oh. Yeah, so this course is basically how to design. So it's the first course in the masterclass that I've produced where I have no idea what the outcome was going to be, and I'm documenting my process so people can follow in the same footsteps of how I come up with ideas and how I troubleshoot, how I come up with design ideas, patterns, things like that. That was weird. Just had a really cold air blowing on my the back of my neck and face. That was really weird. I wonder if it came from there. Never had that before. Well, I'm not alone in the workshop. I've got you guys, so you know. That was quite eerie. It felt like really ice cold air. And this barn is from the 1700s. So maybe it's haunted, or it's really windy outside and there's somehow air coming through that thing at the top there you can see over my shoulder above the round knife. Oh, great. I shall sit through it. Good to have you. It'd be amazing to tap on how you get amazing ideas. Yeah, I mean, some ideas are 100% organic. Some ideas are made up of an amalgamation of designs that I've seen before that I kind of want to pair together, and then we go through a first edition, then second edition, and then third edition, and keep making changes and updates, and you end up coming up with something quite unique, but still based on things that have been done before. I'm certainly not the first person to make a bucket bag or a doctor's bag or English briefcase or a handbag of a certain style and shape. But yeah, it's a process. A lot of people think that you've got to have a knack for design, and all it really comes down to is curiosity and an eye for interesting designs that you want to kind of play around with and have fun with and test. It's a ghost, says Adam. Yes, imagine. Well, if that ghost could like blow warm air up my back or something like that, because I've got the heater on full in here. It's only just hitting 19 degrees. It was so cold in here yesterday. I had my my Dickies jacket on while I was stitching. I can feel the wind from your side to where I am now at the equator. Okay. This particular cut along here is getting particularly fuzzy at the base, just the way it's cut, and it's really tricky to see or feel for where the holes are. Good Lord, it's done it again. Yeah, there's a big breeze coming through. I can see the cobwebs moving. What would you guys do if, like, as I turned away, you just saw a face, like, do like, Phil, there's someone up there. The only thing up there is spiders and mice. The spiders I can deal with. Don't like the bastards, but mice. I have to keep leaving little care packages for them, and eventually they go away. Unfortunately, I'd rather not, but they make so much noise. It's really disturbing. What's the best punch tool size to use for this project? I use a 3.85 for wallets. 3.85. Yeah, you could absolutely do. 3.85. I use a 3.38, which gives you that. It's not particularly coarse, yet not particularly fine. It's a good kind of small to medium sized bag. Pricking iron choice, especially if you want it to be a bit of a feature. Like, the stitching is a feature on here. It makes the design pop a little bit more. Where the stitching isn't, gives it more of a 3D effect, I find. So it's kind of and I love tan and off-white stitching. It's the best pairing. If you're going to do a contrast stitch, that's the one for me. I think that's a good pricking iron size. 3.85, yeah, it's appreciably larger. I tend to, I like a stitch with a wide slit, as in like a wider prong. Like, if we take a look at this, for example, I found this on like AliExpress years ago. It's a really wide prong, as you can kind of see if it's going to focus. Not expensive, but it's like 2.5 millimeters, and for 3.38, it's pretty wide. I think a lot of attention is paid onto the distance between the prongs, but not a lot of people pay much attention to the actual width of a prong, which makes a difference because a wider prong, you can use thicker thread. You've got higher angles as well. Yeah, 2.5 exactly. Now this one here is also 3.38. But you can see the prongs are much narrower. We're looking at 1.8 millimeters. That doesn't sound, between 1.8 and 2.5, doesn't sound like a whole lot. But for the same pricking iron size, the difference between the angles are going from this to like that, which really looks hand stitched by comparison. So much of it is down to the design of the pricking iron as much as it is the spacing as well. Can give a very, very different look. These two on the same piece of leather will look night and day. And the wider prong will look like it has more space between them, because it goes from here to here. The space doesn't change, but this one's like almost touching the next one. And you start doing that, going in a higher angle, there is actually more distance between it, even though it's the same stitch spacing size, if you know what I mean. So much depends on the design. For wallets, I think 3.85 is fine if you're looking for a chunky look and the stitching is very much plays into the design. That takes a large role in the design. Like you look at that wallet and it's heavily stitched. It has that stitched look to it. Then absolutely. If that's not what you're going for and you want something, I actually have a wallet here to show you. If you want something that isn't showcasing the stitching so much, like this zip wallet, it has a much finer stitch. I've kind of matched the stitching to the wallet. It's very thin materials. Okay, with a little gusset in there. Like that's 2.7. That would be what I would choose universally. And I did that for a course. If I wasn't doing it for a course, I would probably be going with like this. That's a number 12 vintage iron. This is a T. Dixon, so very, very old. Okay, 12 stitches per inch is very fine, very fine. I think 2.7 is like 10 stitches per inch, so appreciably more. That's what I would choose. But no one, very few people have access to buying vintage tools, so I went with 2.7. But yeah, 3.85 is getting large. It's getting large. So as long as it factors into your design, it's fine. If you're not wanting the stitching to be very much a focal point of your design, then a smaller pricking iron I think will be better. That would be my advice. Mr. Snowman will freak out of the window. It's behind you. I feel it takes forever to complete stitching for 3.85. Well then, stick to that. But you know, I'm going slow here because it's very tricky to stitch into suede with invisible holes. But generally speaking, the more you do it, the quicker you're going to get at doing it. Eventually, you could be stitching at 3 millimeters, which is a lot finer, faster than you are 3.85 now. So you've got to get into a rhythm, get into a good technique, and get into a stage that you would normally be called unconscious competence, which is you can competently do something kind of subconsciously without having to think about, you know, put the left one in and then that one goes under there and then you pull through and you turn and you push that in and then you pull those through and then like I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about my answer to you. I'm still looking at my work, but my was it the lizard part of my brain, I don't know, is doing this. I'm very much doing this subconsciously. And that takes a while. First few stitches I'm probably doing very consciously because it is a bit of a pain in the ass. I have to think about it a little bit more. Yeah, no problem. I find that after I punch the leather, I can't the holes, and I have to use the needle to find the hole. Oh, can't find the holes? Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it can be like a blind person looking out for a drain. I guess that's true. What I'm doing here, I've got my little walking stick, trying to find the next hole. I mean, I'll show you what I'm looking at right now, if it will even focus on that. That's, you know, can you see any holes there? So not easy. Okay, we're officially halfway through. And I'm thinking 1.5 arm spans of thread is definitely longer than I need, because I'm halfway through and I still have pretty much almost an arm span's worth. So the next one I think will be a little shorter, because it saves time having to pull multiple times to get the thread to come through, like once and then grab it again and then a second time, is not ideal, because it slows you down as well. You know, I've been good. I haven't had any Christmas chocolates yet. Nada. Inbound Flipper says, cheers, Phil. You're very welcome. Excuse me. Oh, this back end is getting really difficult to do. I think this is going to look really nice. I mentioned before, I did flip this inside out with just the glued edges and placed it inside the bag, and it fits really well. I think it's going to look rather nice. Nicer than I anticipated overall for this design. I'm very pleased with how it's turned out. I like it. It's actually quite different from what I normally do. I'm very much doing a more kind of classic work, I guess. So this is a bit of a break for me. No, I can't really do a course on design and then have like a standard wallet or a standard briefcase or a standard handbag. It's like, you know, it doesn't take a genius to come up with something that's been done a million times and has a very kind of set design. So it had to be doing something different to what I would normally be doing. I mean, it's not like there's nothing like this in the world. Of course, there's going to be, but something different, I think, helps kind of people understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Need some more advice when I use a ruler and a pen knife or craft knife to cut the line. It's quite maddening that some leather stretches while cutting. No worries. Well, if your leather is stretching, it's likely that you're using stretchy leather, as in, soft leathers, chrome tan leathers, or at least very thin vegetable tan leathers. It could also be that you're using veg tan, but it's you're using flank or something from the belly section or the neck, which could be quite stretchy. So in those cases, something like a rotary cutter, which isn't pulling, it's rotating and pressing the blade into the leather, so it's not really stretching it at the same time. Another one will be a round knife as well, as you're rolling it into the leather, can be another way. But if you're using a ruler, something like a rotary cutter, it doesn't have to be an expensive one. I've used one designed for decorating before, which is just cutting sheets of wallpaper. It was like very cheap, but it makes a big difference, and it stops it from being overstretched. If you're cutting intricate curves, then it could be a little bit more challenging, because you can't really get a tight curve with this because there's too much blade in the surface. But if you're using a ruler and a straight one, yeah. You can also get rulers that are not necessarily flat, like this one. I don't have one. I think the company that makes it is Maun, M-A-U-N. And if you look at a cross section, it looks like an M. It comes up and then down and then up and then down the other side. So all the weight is on the edges of the ruler. I think I did buy one once from Screwfix up the road, and it was like not straight. So I sent it back and I've never used one since. But it puts all that pressure on a smaller surface area, so it presses the leather down so it can't move. That's the idea behind it. So that's another way you could do it. But it's very difficult with a craft knife, because it does, even when sharp, provide quite a bit of friction, which can pull the leather. So unless you're using a laser cutting machine, soft leathers can be a bit of a pain. I hope that gives you some ideas. Adam says, are the holes in the top of the liner there to attach? No. These holes will be receiving these grommets. And these are the first time I'm trying this, so a bit of an experiment. They're like if Chicago screws and grommets had a child, had a baby, that's what these are. So there's like a male and female side, and you screw them in. Sorry, more fingers and thumb. Yeah. So that's what they'll be receiving. And that way I can put through a cord. Here's just a very rudimentary one that I made. I won't be using this in real life. Through all the holes. And I'll be creating like a drawstring end using Chicago screws. Spoiler alert, this is a prototype that goes on there, and you can tighten it to add or reduce friction. And then as you pull that up, the top of this closes in on itself and stays there. And then to open it, you just pull that little doohickey forwards, and then it all comes out. The friction restraint strap. I don't know. I'll come up with some kind of snazzy name. But normally in something of this style, you'd have like 12 of them. But the issue is leather doesn't like to fold that many times, especially when it has a turned top like this. So I'm going with 8, which will give us 6 folds in total, which is a bit more reasonable. Because normally this is done on fabric, so I'm having to make some modifications because I've decided to use leather instead. Okay, we'll try a rotary cutter. Yeah, that would be my advice to start with. Well, what's the hole size of the Chicago screws to buy? You mean the grommets? They're not Chicago screws, but they're just kind of like, I'm drawing comparison. These are the 7mm hole. If you're talking about these, I think these are 10. Is it 10 or 8? Oh, neither. 9.5. And the height on these, I guess that's, is that 6? I can't remember. It looks like 6mm, if that's what you were talking about. But the grommets I see everywhere, actually. I've seen them on eBay. I've seen them on Amazon. They're easy to get. And I thought, you know, I wanted to try them out instead of getting people to buy specific grommets, and each size will need its own set of tools, like a little hammer and an anvil and that kind of thing. It's just easier to buy those and then put a little bit of Loctite or contact adhesive on the threads while it's still wet, and then screw it up, and it's just a lot easier. And I tried them out. I was like, they're pretty good value for money. I was like, well, maybe they're not real brass. So I got one and gave it the bit of file treatment, and sure enough, it's solid brass all the way through. So fair enough. Some factories pumping those out by the millions. Yeah, no worries. However, I will say, before you go ahead and buy them, I think that's the size that I'm going to go with. But this is a course where you'll only find out what I actually did at the end of it, if you know what I mean. That's just a prototype. That could be open to change, but that does work. Especially the 9.5. And I think depth-wise, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with that. But there are sometimes a new idea will spontaneously come to me, and I'll try something else instead. But I like that idea. I came up with that idea actually for something very different. Another hobby that I have unrelated to leathercraft, that I wanted to create some kind of friction restrainer for something. And I thought, can I make something where you can actually change the amount of pressure on there and have something a bit more custom? And at a later date, when, I don't know, leather shrinks or it gets slick or whatever, you could potentially tighten it up again. Because so many of them that I see are just stitched in place, and it's like, it's not really going to hold that well over time. And something that's immovable. Come on, there we go. No, I don't know what's happened there, but there's some fibers that are not behaving. That's the downside to polyester sometimes. If a strand breaks inside and unravels at a different rate, you get these like lumps. I just give it a wax and then pull, stretching them all. Let's retest that. Yeah, that seems to have done the trick. Yeah, I've gone with polyester here because polyester is, people say, oh, it's stronger than linen thread. In certain circumstances, it can be, yeah. Will you see that strength, a benefit to it? is a better question, because sometimes you can have a thread that's stronger than the other, but you're never going to explore the limits of the strength of the weaker thread. So it doesn't really matter. But however, I want to use a really thin thread on here. And polyester does well when it gets thin versus linen thread, because linen thread really relies on the pressure of the twist. So you'll have several different lengths of staples that have been spun and then spun again together. And as you're twisting and twisting and twisting, it's crushing itself. And the more threads that you have, the more it can do that. So thin linen thread is actually quite difficult to produce and still keep strong, because it doesn't have the crushing power of more threads wound around it, causing more friction between the fibers. So they are more prone to slipping apart. This is the issue people have with like 632 and below, especially if they like to stitch tight. Halfway through a seam and it snaps. You're like, oh no. But it is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Linen thread likes to be thick. So unlike the outside, I've gone for polyester. And that will give us a bit more longevity. So generally prefer linen thread. However, I do appreciate the benefits of polyester sometimes. Finally getting to the last corner. I won't stay too much longer on this live, because otherwise it's going to get really boring for people. Unless you like to watch a man struggling, then Bob, how's it going? Don't forget, guys, if you are new to Leathercraft, or you want to see how I teach how to hand stitch, on leathercraftmasterclass.com, there's a free video on how I do it available. You just pop your email address in and I send you a video absolutely free. Of course, you can unsubscribe whenever you want to. There's no pressure. But I'm doing blogs and podcasts and things all the time. So being an email subscriber allows you to see when the latest content comes out, new videos, a live that you may have missed. So it's if you really want to improve your leathercraft, subscribe to the email list is a good way of doing that, so that you can get an alert when new content comes out. What I'm doing here is that I left the corners free of using the stitching chisel, because you kind of have to go through another layer and then back in to transition from this seam into this seam. You can't just like stitch around the corner. Well, you could do, but you'd have exposed thread. It would look silly and wouldn't last very long. So that's worked quite well. So now I can turn this way. So you're seeing the base. This is the bottom end. And which is, once this is all stitched in and then flipped inside out, is what you would actually see at the bottom of the bag. There's one there, there's one there. Sometimes just getting the damn pricking iron or stitching chisel, and I can kind of see where that where the hole is. There it is. Okay. Okay, and move that over a little bit more. And then using my pattern weights to kind of crush it in place. I could watch all day, says Bob. Doing well, thank you. You feeling better? I am feeling, yeah, definitely feeling better. The voice is still like hurting if I'm talking too much. I did bring a hot drink for myself. Coffee and Manuka honey. I thought maybe that will work. Interesting flavor. But yeah, overall doing better. Thank you for asking. So coming up the opposite side on the home straight towards the end. Looking forward to it. Move this up a little bit more in there. There we go. That's what it is. Yeah, gotta be careful on this. We don't want it too loose because when you flip it, you'll start seeing threads on the rear, on the inside. But if we stitch chrome tan leather too tightly, it begins to crush, and it will very quickly lose its dimensions, which is not ideal. So just a little kind of tug, allow that thread to squeeze into the leather a little bit. I'm going to try. It's right here. It's just feeling for the hole in the leather with a round awl. No. Instantly. Yeah, it doesn't work. Thought I found a little hack there. It does not. Chamomile tea with honey works great. Yeah. Maybe before bed, that would be a good one. I'm actually feeling fine. It's just any time that I have to do continuous talking, or have to do, any time that I continuously talk, which is not a lot if I'm not doing a live. Maybe I'll throw out a few expletives here and there if something's not going my way, but generally don't talk to myself, so I feel okay. So hopefully this survives, this thread. It is starting to bunch up again. Difficult to see. See, there's little kind of like nodes. That's where some piece of thread has unraveled in the cabling, and the rest of the thread stays straight, and it starts to work its way down because it's severed usually somewhere near the top, and starts to kind of, because it's not being held by the needle anymore, work its way down, and you get this spiral of nodes, and then they become lumpy to pull through the holes, which is a real pain. And there's no real cure to it other than adding a little bit of wax and stretching them back up again, but they will eventually start coming down again. And don't tend to get that with linen thread, but even a high quality polyester like this one, which is from Fil Chinois, it's still susceptible to it. It's a polyester thing, it seems. Tried multiple different brands, and anytime you're doing a long seam of polyester, it seems to be more of a pain than just using linen thread. I mean, linen thread has its own issues. It can tend to get a little dirty sometimes, especially if you're pulling a light-colored leather through, light-colored thread through darker leathers. It can, towards the top, start picking up the dye a little bit, or if your hands aren't particularly clean. But apart from that, and getting a bit fluffy occasionally. But when the strands really start to ping on polyester thread, it can be diabolical to stitch that towards the end. But you've come so far, you just keep going with it. I live in an apartment, and when I have to make sew leather, the neighbor will come pounding at my door, and I have to bluff to her that I am chopping chicken for dinner. That's a very unique issue. I guess you're using a pricking iron on it. Excuse me. Do you have the problem where the thread gets loose up at the needle when saddle stitching? You mean outside of what I was talking about, when it gets loose? Yeah, if you haven't locked it in, I usually lock it in 3 times, and then just get a bit of wax and like twist the needle in my fingers a little bit as I'm waxing, and then just squeeze and pull slowly. So you can get a friction burn beforehand, and that alone adds a lot of friction, so it shouldn't loosen up. And every so often you can do what I'm doing here, since you've reminded me. Yeah, using a pricking iron. I mean, there are ways of mitigating the sound of the pricking iron. You could get something of high mass, like excuse the mess, like one of these, and carefully place that on your lap. Not too thin, otherwise you strike it wrong, it will crack on your lap. It's not ideal. But if you put that on your lap and then put the leather on there, and then you could put a board on there or something like that, so that you could pound the pricking iron through without hitting the granite or marble or whatever you're using. Granite is my preference. That removes a lot of sound because your thighs are generally quite soft, and the weight of that will absorb a lot of the sound. So yeah, there are ways of doing it. If you are hitting a board which is on a table, and the table is directly connecting to the floor, which directly connects to your neighbor's ceiling, you're kind of just using the ceiling as a loudspeaker for what you're doing. You need something to absorb the vibrations. Something needs to be of high mass, and then something needs to be quite soft. I mean, you could even use some thick, high-density foam sheet, like an inch or 2 thick, and then place a slab of granite over the top of that, being very careful that, you know, you don't hit it too hard. That can absorb a lot of sound as well. Yeah, but don't upset your neighbor. Damn, this guy chops a lot of chicken. Do you mind? I am in the middle of stitching a chicken. You're making escallops where you got to hit the chicken and make it flat. I've been going for 1 hour and 11 minutes. That's how long it's taken me just to do that. That's dedication for you. As I said earlier in the live, this is kind of a situation where you would be open to a sewing machine because it's not a really high stress structural part. It's not like I can really stretch the seams out because it's going to be sitting inside a bag that's saddle stitched together. Marble slab, yeah, you can use marble. I prefer granite. It's going to generally be a bit stronger. If ever you accidentally hit it, it's less likely to crack, in my opinion. I use something, I think it's like Norwegian blue granite or something like that. It's in the right light, it's magical to look at. It's beautiful blue flecks, silvery flecks. And strangely enough, magnets stick to it too. But I got that from a countertop company. I had it specially cut. It didn't cost me very much, like 25 pounds for a massive piece as well, about 1.5 inches thick. Is it 1.5 inches thick? Yeah. And then I usually just glue on a layer of hardboard underneath the granite, and that way I can kind of move it around on the table if I need to without destroying the table, because the underside is quite rough and it doesn't really want to slide. But I guess you could use something like rubber sheets as well if you didn't want it to move and scratch up your table. I use a rubber mat on top of a stone. Helps quite a bit. Yeah, rubber will work quite well. Even just a sheet of thick veg tan can do wonders as well. But rubber, yeah, stops it moving around as much, especially on a lap, which isn't some people use it on. It's not a perfectly flat surface all the time, so that helps. Need to go find a slab. Yeah, just go to a company that creates like kitchen countertops out of marble, granite, and various others. Because I use it as a pairing stone more than anything else, but it does absorb a lot of sound because of its mass, which will help you in your situation. Especially if you put it on top of something that can absorb sound that's soft. Because the issue that you're probably having is that the transfer of sound waves through hard objects. I've got bonded leather under my granite slab. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's probably even better than the hardboard. It's a good use of bonded leather. It's the kind of place it should be used. Almost done, guys. Almost done. So if you do have any comments or questions, then the next few minutes will be the time to get them in. Really starting to cable up now. I am towards the end, so I'm just gonna pull that a few times. If you use your nail as well, it can help redistribute those severed threads at the top that are starting to unravel down. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I don't like polyester. Yeah, sometimes you can get free granite slabs at places where they engrave tombstones. Yeah, I mean, when I went to the kitchen countertop company, they said like we have a skip there of like tons of broken stuff. If you want, you can, and they're not broken stuff, but like offcuts and some broken pieces because they throw them in. But they said, yeah, like help yourself to any of it. And then some pieces were pretty decent size, but I had a specific size in mind that I wanted because I really, if I'm pairing a large piece, I don't want it to be half off the pairing stone and half on. I like to have a larger piece to work with. So they said, okay, we'll just cut you a piece. And I gave them dimensions that I wanted and what I wanted. And then they said, okay, come back in an hour and I'll have it done. And yeah, it was like 20, 25 pounds. It was hardly anything. I mean, for them, it's just like zoom, zoom, and then it's done. Didn't need any finished edges or anything like that. I did have to use a sander on the edges of it though, just to bevel the edges. And granite's hard, man. It worked, but I had to use like a super coarse sandpaper on a really fast setting for it to even tickle the edges of the granite. It was incredible. But yeah, you can if you don't want it a specific size or a very large piece, then yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tombstones. There's another one that's a little bit more morbid, but probably going to be a lot thicker as well if you want something that's a lot of mass. Just don't pick one up and you turn it over. It's just like R.I.P. Granddad. I'm sure they mess up some names or dates and things like that, and they have to scrap the tombstone. So you can have that one for free. Only a few more to go. So I'm going to finish off this with a binding over stitch. The top area where the grommets are going to go is obviously a turned edge, but it's been turned twice. So there's a turned edge at the top, and what you're seeing here is a turned edge, and I just broke that seal. That's going to be annoying to pair up. So yeah, it's a little thicker there, and I'm going to do a binding stitch at the top, so a stitch that goes over the tops to help keep everything together, and then a couple of back stitches because we want it to have a little bit of strength, a little bit of longevity. Almost there. Crack the back. Imagine there's a name on it, yeah. Here lies the leather project I screwed up. Yeah. What was that? What was that comedian? Something Sykes. Who I think he's definitely dead now. Who said he wanted on his tombstone just to describe his name, and then underneath, I told you I was ill. Don't know why that just made me think of that. Yeah, English comedian. I can't remember his name now. I have a shelf labeled the Wall of Shame shelf. Those mistakes sit there so I remember to never attempt them again. Yeah. Yeah, whatever it takes to help you remember back in the day, and when I'd get through a project, even if I was like halfway through making a wallet and I'd make a mistake of some kind, there's some part of my kind of creative solution brain that will be like, well, if I did this and I did that and then I covered that, and if I start to get overly creative in the sense of I am compromising the look of this in order to force this to work, I will get a round knife and just quickly cut it before I can kind of band-aid it all together. And that really kind of, it's painful, but it helps you to remember. And then, when you come to make it again, you're not compromising. If there is a very simple, elegant, creative solution, then that's fine. But if you're starting to get a little over creative, trying to make a mistake work, and it's not improving anything in any way, then I destroy it without thinking too much about it. That tends to stick in the memory. So I'm doing a couple of binding over stitches here. So let's turn around so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Spike Milligan. That's it. I said something Sykes, didn't I? No, that's not. No, Spike Milligan. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I remember when I was younger, there was an advert for him on billboards for a train company, because a lot of people, because he's always been like really old for some reason. It was like the late Spike Milligan, like as if he's died or something, and then like the high-speed train line, not bloody likely, you know. He's never late. But yeah, Spike Milligan, that's one. He was in the Goon Show, wasn't he? I remember listening to that on the radio as a kid. Now that's showing my age. Okay, so binding over stitch going around there. I don't know if you can see that. Kind of. Yep. And now I'm going to do 2 back stitches going back. Just to add a little bit more strength, and also we're using thin thread. So if ever there is stress on this area, which is most likely, we're kind of sharing the load a little bit. One more should do it. Okay, where is the... that's it. Right, this is polyester thread, isn't it? So I'm going to take advantage of that. Introduce a bit of fire. Good. And this will be on the inside. You won't see it, but I'm still gonna push that little mushroomed end just inside the stitching there. And that will get tapped down. Just adds a little mass that makes it hard to pull through. Good, and I'm going to Yash, hello. How are you doing? Just going to squeeze that in there. That's good. Good. So we didn't do too badly. I might actually I use more thread than I really needed. But I might maintain that length again, because there is bits of this thread that is, you kind of see it here. Can you see it bunching up? If you pull that down like that, it starts to disappear a little bit. So there's a piece of thread at the top has severed, so it starts to come down. Really annoying, but it's a polyester thread thing. Good, so squeezing those. Yeah, there's little tiny angles on there. Very mild, especially for a stitching chisel. So that's the seam that I've been doing. And when we flip this inside out, there should be a minimal amount of, you can kind of see a little puckering. That's going to be quite normal. It's better to see puckering from going tight than the opposite of going too loose and then actually seeing the fibers in that little crack there. But once you kind of pinch together and hammer down on the edge of the table, that will kind of reverse, if you know what I mean. It's easier to get rid of puckering than visible stitches. I might actually re-glue that there, which is annoyingly come loose. Saludos, Desde Mexico. I'm going to guess that means hello from Mexico. It's a hello from the United Kingdom. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I haven't actually added, I haven't roughened this chrome tan leather in these areas where I'm actually stitching. The main reason being is when you roughen a larger area, long cuts, with like a roughing tool or a bit of sandpaper and that kind of thing, it tends to stretch the dimensions out a little bit, and I didn't want that to happen, so that when I glue it together, it all matches up and all the corners glue together and match up together, because when the dimensions shift and you're trying to glue something that should match and it isn't matching, it's a real pain. So I haven't roughened, so it's just until it's stitched using the strength of contact adhesive, a good contact adhesive, on heavily pigmented surface. So it's not anchoring that well, but that's fine. Once it's stitched in, that will never have to be worried about ever again. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it there. As I mentioned earlier, don't forget, if you're brand new to Leathercraft, to get your free video on hand stitching and the technique that I use for saddle stitching from leathercraftmasterclass.com. Thank you for joining me on this. I will be doing some more lives, probably tomorrow, and it might be on Instagram as well. I like to kind of like do some on YouTube, some on Instagram, depending on what's going on. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you very much. And I will see you in the next live. Don't forget to turn on your notifications so that you get one as soon as I go live, and you can come and say hi and ask questions. All right, guys, that's been me for 1 hour and 33 minutes. I will see you in the next live. Take care. All the best. Merry Christmas.